All right.
All right. Thank you and welcome to the sixth presentation in Westchester University's Spring 2026 Sustainability Research and Practice Seminar. My name is Bradley Flam. I'm the director of the Office of Sustainability, and our office is honored to co-sponsor this series of talks with our colleagues in the Office for Research and Sponsored Programs and in the Sustainability Council's Scholarly and Creative Activities Committee. Today's presentation is part of a program of 11 presentations this semester. For those of you here in person, if you'd like a hard copy of the program, there are copies here at the front. And for those of you joining us on Zoom, you can find a PDF copy on the Office of Sustainability's homepage. Today, we are very happy to be inviting Mr. Bruce Brockman, who is the Vice President for Sustainability Operations and Logistics at Goodwill Keystone area, an organization that Westchester University began collaborating with in the summer of last year. And we've been very happy to have this partnership and fortunate today to have Mr. Brockman come and talk to us about Goodwill Industries' approach to sustainability. So please join me in welcoming Mr. Bruce Brockman.
Thank you, Bradley. So I want to thank everybody for the invitation to Westchester University and have the opportunity to do this. Today, I'd like to explore sustainability and look at sustainability through the lens of Goodwill Industries or Goodwill Keystone. As an organization, most people know us for our stores and they know of the thrift stores. What they really don't know is what goes on behind those thrift stores and how we are a sustainability engine and how we use sustainability to better our community, our employees, and the world around us. My goal is to show you that we restore not just the good to values, but we also restore the good to individuals and communities. For sure.
You have to click on the screen first.
Okay. There we go. So I'd like to talk a little bit about who Goodwill is and about our structure. So Goodwill Industries is part of, or Goodwill Keystone is part of Goodwill Industries. There's roughly 150 Goodwill organizations across North America. Each one of those is an independent operating organization with its own board of directors. And everything that happens within each one of those stays within that area. Goodwill Keystone operates 22 counties, south central, southeastern Pennsylvania. The only area that we don't touch is Philadelphia proper and Delaware County. So in those 22 counties, we have what's going to be 43 stores here very soon. And we touch a large portion. We have Cumberland, Harrisburg, everything but that main Philly area. So we touch a large part of the population. We are the largest in Pennsylvania. So our mission is we create pathways to self-sufficiency so that individuals can thrive and flourish. And one of the ways that we do that is I want to highlight how we restore the value in goods and then into people. It's the heart of what we do. We operate at the intersection of social impact and environmental stewardship. There we go. The circular economy. So a lot of people say a lot of different things when we talk about the circular economy. Our approach to it is that we minimize the waste through our collections, our reselling, our recycling, and our salvaging. What we want to do is replace the take, make, dispose, and replace it with the reduce, reuse, recycle model. Goodwill Keystone is a living example of circularity. There's sustainability in social impact and in planet impact. This slide here is going to show you a little bit about how we approach that. And how we do that, our mission, as I said before, is to advance sustainability so that individuals and families can thrive and flourish. And we do that with our 4 Ps of sustainability. Now, the 4 Ps on our Keystone do not necessarily fall in any particular order. It's just where we put them. But the 4 Ps are prosperity, planet, people, and perpetuity. Each one of them is linked to the other one. So our prosperity is the community, individuals. People we look at as our employees. And how do we impact our employees? Planet speaks for itself. Perpetuity is making sure that we have the fiscal responsibility and the fiscal strength to continue this mission well into the future. And how we do that is through a 3-year strategy, and the tactics that we use that are concrete, actionable steps and systems that innovate, design, and bring mission, vision, and strategy to our lives. The first one I want to touch on is prosperity. So we create pathways for individuals so that an individual and a family, they can thrive and flourish. Like, well, what do we mean by that? So what is their job? What is their means of living? What about their home life? Understanding a budget. What can we do to somebody so that they have the ability to live a sustainable life? We restore the value in donated or discarded items as a way to restore value in individuals. We have multiple programs that either enhance, teach new skills to an individual. Some of those, I'm clever here, are like the WOW program. It's wisdom, opportunity, and wealth. So that delivers a financial training to individuals about budgeting, entrepreneurship. It teaches AI skills so that somebody can learn how to go in with AI and create their own small business. And one of the things that we see much of is people come into our shops and they shop and they buy clothing and then they go home and resell that. Not just buying clothing to wear, they resell it and create their own business model doing that. And we teach them how to do that. We do a lot of work in the reentry world. We're in both federal and state prisons, and to a lesser degree, the only county prison we're working with currently is Dauphin County. And I'm going to get this word wrong. I always get it wrong. Reduce recidivism. I can never get that word right. We do that with training, some of the same trainings that we use for WOW and some of these other programs that we have to reduce that recidivism. To date, we only had one person that we touched ended up going back to jail. That has changed a little bit now. We do a work release program at Dauphin County, and we've had a number of those individuals float back and forth, unfortunately, but we've had so many successes. We've brought on people that permanently work for us. We have our mobile learning lab. It is a 28-foot trailer, high-tech trailer that has inside of it learning stations, computers, virtual reality, and we can take this to and mold it to fit different levels of education. It can go to school and teach students about stuff. It could go to some type of adult career teaching, and it allows people to go in and experience and explore different opportunities and different careers that they may or may not be interested in before they start out that way. So the prosperity part continued is work opportunities for individuals with disabilities. One of the large things that people knew Goodwill for is work with individuals that have some type of barrier, whether it be social, economical, physical, mental, some barrier to sustainable employment. We create opportunities for that. We partner with like the Navy Depot, Army Depot, the federal courthouse, PennDOT. How many people have gone into a PennDOT location and got their license picture taken? All of us, right? Chances are, depending if you were in our 22 counties, that was a Goodwill employee that took your picture. Our clubhouse in Lehigh County, it provides a safe, healing environment for individuals with mental illness and other barriers. We've served more than 8,000 individuals in the public last year alone. People. As I said, we look at people as our employees. What do we do with our employees that we have? We have over 1,500 employees that are employed with Goodwill Keystone. We provide established career paths to sustaining wages. A lot of times people think, well, the Goodwill individuals, they don't make any money or they're minimum wage. The truth is our average wage is over 15 and our entry wage is very close to $15 an hour currently. I have truck drivers that run CDLA that are making 32 plus an hour. And I have like 13 of those slots. Our store managers make a very livable wage. So we don't call them assistant managers, but our assistant managers. So there's opportunity to make a livable wage working with us. But while you're working with us, some of the unique things that we do, upfront tuition. You can come to us if you work for us, and it doesn't matter what you want to do. You can say, I want to learn how to play the violin. We'll help pay for you to go learn how to play the violin. If you want to study business and it helps you with your current job, that's fine. Or if you want to go be a welder, HVAC tech, or go into the trades, we're going to help you do that. Even though that doesn't necessarily mean that it's good for us we're not going to use you as an employee, but it fits our mission. And that's why we do that. We provide opportunities to learn skills from AI training. We're one of the leaders in AI training in the workforce. Goodwill Keystone is. We held our Gains conference where we brought in AI leaders from Microsoft and everywhere else into Hershey, Pennsylvania. And it was the first of its kind. Now there's been a couple more and we're having another one. But how do we take AI, teach AI skills to enhance somebody's marketability in the workplace? And then the last of the three P's before we get to planet is perpetuity. So we do all these things, but if we only do them for a year or two, that's not sustainability. So we need to invest in ourselves, and whether that be growing, making sure that we have a financial structure so that we can pay the living wage. So that's what we do with the perpetuity one. How do we make sure that we do these things, but remain fiscally responsible so that we can do these things for far into the future? Without the financial strength, the other P's begin to suffer and we can't do them. I will tell you a little story before we move on to the planet portion. And you've heard me say about restoring the value of people. I want to tell you a story about Olivia. And interestingly enough, Olivia came to us just by answering an ad for employment. She grew up in a house that was marked with addiction, incarceration, no parents in her house. Her brother, who was the primary caregiver, he was killed in a murder in Miami. She was just a young teenager, and by the time she was 21, she was incarcerated and really had no path. Living on the streets, stealing drugs, everything. About June of 2022, she was released. She had nowhere to go. She fortunately had a friend who allowed her to stay at her house. But she went for over a year, but she couldn't find employment anywhere. And she came into our office, actually in Middletown, where my office is. And we interviewed her and we said, we need to give her a chance. We're a second chance employer. Her offenses would have probably prevented her in many cases. Well, they did in many cases for a year from getting employment. So we brought her on. She was an entry-level warehouse worker, but she excelled. She was fantastic in everything she did. And you could tell just by talking to her that she cared. And I'll get choked up talking about it because she's incredible. I see her every day. But she progressed through the warehouse, and then we moved her into operating our store, our outlet store, where she was a coordinator there. We just recently, within the last month, promoted her to warehouse supervisor. So she's now at a spot. She's had a daughter. She has a house. She has a car. Like she's the model of somebody taking advantage of that and taken sustainability, not just about recycling, and moved up in world. And she's fantastic. She's the ceiling is wherever she decides it's going to be at. So
Could Kelly take a quick look at the connection there?
I don't know what's going
The blinking and
I
flickering.
thought I kept seeing something there
Yeah.
flash into my eyes.
Let me really quickly try to get on the Ramcast. Sometimes the HDMI cords are just really not, sometimes they don't work. I'll tell them when I go downstairs. So hopefully I can get this quick. I think we're back in business.
Thank you, Kelly.
Sorry about that. It's got really bad for a while.
Yeah. So let me pick up there. So with Olivia's story, I tell that story when I do these presentations because, as I said, it's a real testament to the 3 Ps that we covered beforehand. But none of those 3 Ps are made possible if we don't focus on planning. Because the reality is, where we make our money to be able to provide the funding for the other things we do is through the planet part. And that's the part that I really, really cherish when it comes to Goodwill. And what really thrills me when I get up in the morning and go to work is we take stuff and we make it into a value that we can pump back into society. I'm going to talk a little bit about our donations when somebody donates to us. And we're working with Westchester. So our donations, when a donation comes to us, it goes back to a location, typically a store, and it gets sorted by, we have teams of sorters that go through it and they sort. And think about this for a minute. We don't have any control over our inventory. Our inventory is whatever somebody brings us. A typical retailer says, if I sell widgets, I know how many widgets I sell in a month, so I have to set up my buying department to buy somewhere roughly right around that number of widgets in a constant inventory. And therefore, you know constantly how much money you have in inventory, how much money you have to spend, and can project out your sales. We have no idea. So we don't know what it is, so we have no control over our inventory. But what these sorters do then is they become experts at sorting millions of individual items that are unique and understanding and pricing those millions of individual items. The way they sort them is A grade is the highest level we have. That's going to be sold on what we call shop Goodwill. That's like, in fact, some of it does go on eBay through the eBay practice, but it's shop Goodwill. That's what's going to draw the highest revenue. The next level down is B level. That's what's going to go into our stores. And that stuff will be priced, put in our stores, and it'll be in our stores for 3 to 4 weeks. And during that 3 to 4 weeks, it could go through a reduction in price to the final week. It'll go through a 50% off and then $2 a day. And if it doesn't sell, then it moves back to the warehouse, where it actually becomes C grade, along with anything that we pulled out during the sort that wasn't good enough to be A or B. And that's our C grade. What that is, that goes into our bin stores. And if you ever, who's been to one of our bin stores before? So they're interesting, but they are big tables filled with stuff, just dumped in there. And we sell everything currently at $1.99 a pound. And that's where we see, when I talked earlier about the WOW program and teaching people to be entrepreneurs, and that's where a large portion of those people go to. They shop in the bin stores at $1.99 a pound. They'll pull that stuff off and they go do their own online shopping or online shop that they do. So that's our C grade. Then the final grade is D grade. That's our salvage. That's where we take everything that didn't sell and we take it back out into the warehouse and we sort it into multiple different things. For instance, the textiles get baled into bales that are roughly 12 to 1,300 pounds, and they get sold on the salvage market. Currently, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, textile recycling is a very, very difficult thing. And it's a very difficult thing for a number of reasons. The shirt that I'm wearing probably has at least 3 different fabrics in it. It has buttons, there's zippers and stuff. Those are the disruptors. How do you separate out those different polymers and different textiles? Becomes a very difficult thing. If you get 100% cotton, that's recyclable. 100% polyester, recyclable. And there are companies that do it. The hard part is separating it out by color and type. So that salvage anyway goes out and we sell that. And that usually will end up going to like Pakistan, India, some goes to Africa, even less goes to South America, and it gets purchased or given to individuals and worn. So if you've ever watched like National Geographic or something like that, and you see somebody with a Westchester University t-shirt on in a third world country somewhere, that's how it happened. Somebody donated it and it went through the salvage operation and ended up there. Shoes is another one. We collect single shoes and paired shoes. There is a market for single shoes. People don't understand that in many cases. It's not because there's a bunch of people running around with only 1 foot and need a single shoe. We're so wealthy in the US, we would never think of grabbing a 10.5 brown shoe that's your right and a 10.5 brown shoe that's your left. And they're not quite the same, but they're close enough. Most people in the US would never wear that. That is a luxury in certain places. So there's companies and that get that and they will take it, spread them out in a huge floor, and they will search for a twin or a close enough twin to make them sellable at a reduced rate. Amongst any other things, we collect metals that we recycle, plastics that we recycle, e-waste that we recycle, and that's what our D is. Does anybody have any questions about the sorting? I went through it quick. So in our planet in 24-25, we collected over 73 million pounds of donations in that fiscal year. Our fiscal year ends June each year. So June 30th of 2025 is the end of the year that we were at 73 million pounds. I expect that number to be probably around 76 million this coming year when we get to June 30th. We diverted about 51.75 million pounds away from landfills or incinerators for a 70% diversion rate. Now, some of you were in here earlier and I talked about zero waste. It is virtually impossible for us to be zero waste because we don't control what comes in. If we could control everything that came in, it would destroy what we do, but it also we wouldn't be able to take the things we do responsibly recycle. And I'm trying to work on that. My goal is to get us above 80%, and then I'll work on the next step. But we're currently this year trending around 73 to 74%. We resold over 34 million pounds in our retail operations for people to reuse or recycle. One thing that people don't really realize a lot of times, on average, the average article of clothing takes 700 gallons of fresh water to make. So you have a pair of jeans on. That's probably over 700 gallons of water. Does everybody understand why? Irrigation. So you got to make the cotton. How much water gets put into the field to irrigate the field? And then the manufacturing process takes massive amounts of water. How many times are you going to wash that article of clothing during its lifetime? So at the end of that life cycle, that article of clothing, minimum 700 gallons of water is used. We recycled or salvaged over 17 million pounds of our donations last year. That included electronics, cardboard, metal, different things like that. The revenue generated from that salvage and recycling efforts, plus our resale, help fund the other 3 Ps. Last year, 1.9 million pounds of electronics went through our doors, and we recycled with the help of a company named Reworld. That number to date, as I stand here now, is over 4 million pounds of electronics that we've recycled. That comes to us, we sort it into different categories, send it to Reworld, and they go through the recycling process with it there. So anything that we get here that's an electronic that's not functioning would go through that. We did over 1 million pounds of cardboard in the fiscal year. 12.25 million pounds of textiles was salvaged. Now, I'm very careful to say salvaged on that because it's not necessarily recycled. Some of that could be worn by somebody else, sold by somebody else. Some of it will be recycled. Fortunately, not all of it. Some of the things that we did in the way TVs, tube TVs, 552,000 pounds of those. Flat screens, 655,000. Projection TVs, 37. Mixed household goods, 498. And computers and computer peripherals at 400,000. We're able to move this volume when we did not disrupt our normal flow. So we started this May of 2024. We had an announcement with Secretary Shirley from DEP that we were going to start doing this. And to date now, we're over 4 million pounds. And we did this without any disruption in our operation. Some of the things that we've worked as Goodwill to help develop, we're at the table and we're at the head of the class and trying to find solutions for textile recycling. Not just Goodwill Keystone, all the Goodwills that I talked about that are in the United States. And in fact, a company named Reju just announced that they're going to place their first textile recycling factory in Rochester, New York. They're currently building one in, I think it's Switzerland, but they're going to do their first one, and they are going to be working with Goodwill for feedstock because recycling textiles requires a massive amount of feedstock. And Goodwill's uniquely positioned to be the largest provider of feedstock in textiles. So we will do everything where we call it the hub. So Goodwill Pittsburgh, Goodwill Rochester, Goodwill Keystone start collaborating to send the textiles that don't sell so that Reju has the first shot at recycling them. Our e-waste, as I talked about, partnered with Reworld. We were the first, not the first one, but we were one of the first. We stepped away from a program that was through Dell Electronics, and they would take all the computers and stuff. But what the problem was, they wouldn't take the TVs and other items. So they were skimming off the high value stuff. And the low value stuff was still sitting in my warehouse, and I couldn't get rid of it, and I couldn't recycle it. So I stepped away from that program, and we actually left revenue on the table for this, but it was the right thing to do and partner with Reworld to now all of our stuff gets recycled. We focus in community education around reuse and sustainability. April 22nd, we're going to hold our first Earth Day program at our Middletown facility. We're going to have partners there from Waste Management, Reworld, Keep Pennsylvania Beautiful, and a number of other organizations are going to be there. And our focus is to try to bring students, whether they be college students or from the local high school, middle schools, bring them through, take them through the warehouse and teach them about sustainability and what we do. Local and national collaboration with recycling innovators. I'm constantly looking. I just had a conference call with a company called Shark Solutions, who is a glass recycler. Glass is incredibly difficult to recycle. Most people think glass is recyclable, and it is not, except for some very fine line stuff. So I'm working with them, and we've actually started now separating out porcelain, ceramics, and clear glass so that clear glass can be sent away. I don't know how many pounds that's going to be. My estimate is probably about 1.5 million pounds annually. The porcelain and ceramics present a huge issue. That's going to end up in a landfill because there is not a recycling process for that. There's many people that were looking, put it in concrete, but it causes chemical reactions in concrete, and it will make the concrete deteriorate over time, so it cannot be used like in construction and in buildings and those kind of things for fear of collapse. I skipped on to this. And textiles, I talked a little bit about it. Textiles is another one. There's so many of them. There's mountains of textiles. in the northern deserts of Africa, in the high deserts down in Chile and Peru. There's mountains of textiles that are just discarded because there is not a solution for them. Now, companies like Reju, Goodwill, Waste Management, they're working in partnership with each other on how do we find solutions for some of this. But wholesale textile recycling faces a major problem. Recycled fibers cost more than virgin fibers. And if you're a manufacturer and you can buy a virgin fiber for less money than a recycled fiber, and there's no laws or regulations saying that you need to use X percentage of a fiber, what are you going to do? We all know what the organizations, for the most part, are going to do. So there's going to need to be some social changes for that to really advance. That might be my own personal opinion. I want to thank you for allowing me the time to be here. If you have any questions for me, take a picture, reach out to me, or ask me now. And again, thank you for allowing me to be here.
The participants in the Zoom so we can see them if they raise a hand.
Of course.
No, that's great. Okay, so folks online, please just speak up if you'd like to pose a question, and the floor is open here.
Yes, ma'am.
You seem to be more inclined to kind of go to the state affiliate route, even though it may cause like revenue discrepancies or things like that. So
Yes.
how do you think you could encourage other companies to kind of do this? It seems to be like the main argument I hear from a lot of like big companies, oh, like we can't afford to do it. When obviously like you have been able to find like consistent ways to make it possible, not only like supporting your company, but like supporting your employees. Whereas like most companies who have revenue as large as Goodwill, like don't even offer half of what you're offering to your employees, let alone like what you're offering to your company on the back end.
Bruce, could you quickly summarize the question? Because I'm not sure the folks on Zoom will have heard.
I believe, if I get it right, she's asking how can we help influence other organizations to take on the sustainability practices that we do, even when it is potentially negative to our financial bottom line. And the answer to that is, did I get that right? In short, the answer to that is we can only do it by example, and then when asked, try to present helpful opportunities. We can't control what they do. It's the bottom line. We're able to do it partially because our network that we have set up, so our transportation network, our sorting network, we are experts at sorting millions of individual things, like I said before. That is a unique skill in the organizations. There's not many, they focus, I use the term widgets because it's something that I learned years ago, but they focus on, I handle widgets. You know, if you give them a spring, they don't know what to do with the spring. They just know how to handle widgets, and they get lost in that somewhat. So just by leading by example and try to be an example in our community, both with the community itself and with the organizations that operate within it.
Is that a service that you think you can outsource to other communities or companies that could kind of be a revenue driver for you and like helpful to others?
I will tell you, it's a conversation that we've had in our senior leadership and our C-suite conversations. We are not necessarily Keystone. We're on the verge of it, of offering it. Right now, we would be willing to help other Goodwill organizations. It becomes a very different thing when you take that out and whether you do it as, because now you got to decide, am I going to offer this? Is it a free service? Because if you're going to take myself, or I'm going to take Tony and I'm going to use him as a consultant and send him away for 3 weeks, there is an impact that's not just financial. There's an operational impact to that. So we have to kind of, how do we do that? But it is something that's discussed in our, we're not doing it yet, but it's something that is discussed whether we could feasibly do those things.
Let me clarify one thing. You mentioned that we could possibly go out, help other Goodwill. So our Goodwill, like you said, represents more part of what we do here, and there's other Goodwills that aren't to the level that we are. But because we are in the network,
Yep.
we do lean on each other for information, for training, for some type of like nuggets and things that if you reduces on a lot of those calls with Goodwill across the nation. Helping them get them up to speed so that they can possibly not do it here.
By no means are we the best.
Right.
They're like, there's Goodwills out there that are better than we are at it. And I'll be the first one to go and, hey, how did you do that? And try to figure that out. And regional makes a big difference. What you can do in the Midwest is way different than you can do in California, which is way different than you can do in New England or the Central Atlantic. So the laws and what you're allowed to do and what you can do, it changes by region. So what works for me may not work for somebody else and vice versa.
Like we have a question on Bill, Professor Wanka.
Hello.
I-
Yeah, thank you so much. Uh-oh, there's some feedback. There it is. Thank you so much for this. This was really informative. I appreciate the overview. I was really excited about that New York project, even though I completely agree with you that the problem is the supply into the system as opposed to
Yes.
what happens at the end of the system. So the New York project, is it a partnership somehow with New York? Because what has always kind of bothered me about this whole waste stream is just how much townships and municipalities are paying to haul it all away. And so I don't think that they recognize just how much they're spending on hauling away textiles into landfills. So is the New York project somehow taxpayer subsidized, or do you work with other municipalities?
So nothing is taxpayer subsidized, that I can tell you. So
Yeah.
Goodwills are funded by our own revenue stream that we build doing this. We work Goodwill Keystone. I can only speak for us. Goodwill Keystone and actually Antonio, who's here in the audience with us, we work with townships, municipalities all over our 22 counties and do clean out days, recycling days, shred events, e-waste collection days. And we do all this as a way to collect those donations so that we can then look at what it is that we got. Can we generate revenue from it? And if we can't, then it goes through our process to reduce the waste stream. Goodwill Keystone alone pays over $3 million a year to haul stuff away. That 30%, it's got to go to the, unfortunately, it has to go to the landfill or to the incinerator. And that's over a $3 million cost to us every year. Does that answer your question, ma'am?
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions?
I'm curious about the training you do, because it sounds like that is a core part of the mission.
It
of
is the
Goodwill
mission.
Keystone area, and it takes what we know of Goodwill, sort of the collection of donations and sorting and resale, and really expands to parts of the work you do that the general public doesn't usually see. And so it's so impressive, but I'm wondering what is the history of making this almost social services part of your mission so important that you're using the revenue you generate from what we see of Goodwill to put it into working with people coming out of incarceration and working with people with disabilities or mental health. What is the origin of that? It's just so impressive to see those different parts of a sustainable society coming together under your organization.
So there was an individual, Edgar Helms, roughly 125 years ago. He was and I'm not an expert at Goodwill's origins. My boss is an expert at it. But he was a pastor, and he was way ahead of his time and saw having individuals, he would go around and collect from wealthy neighborhoods stuff that was discarded or they didn't want and bring it back. And the original origin was then those individuals that needed help, instead of giving them stuff, instead of a handout, he looked at it as a hand up. And they would teach them how to repair clothing or how to repair a piece of a lamp, but they didn't necessarily have lamps on, but something that was out of the household, and make it usable again to then either keep or to resell and generate that revenue. So it was a business model that came from that. And that originally started up in the Boston area. And then over the years, it grew and grew and grew. And now we have Goodwills all through North America. There's one in South Korea. There's a couple in Europe, South America that are around as well. So that's the origins to it. The Goodwill Keystone is roughly 75 years old. And we actually are the product of 3 Goodwills that merged, I think about 20 years ago. And that was Harrisburg, Lancaster, and Reading Goodwills. And they merged not because they were financially in trouble. They merged because they saw the power that they had if the 3 of them could come together. And it was really insightful for those 3 CEOs and boards to recognize that somebody was going to lose power, but it was better for the movement, the organization. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it gives a sense.
To that point, I'm sorry. To that point, one thing about Goodwill, we're terrible at telling our story. We're absolutely terrible.
You're here today.
Well, we're trying to change that. So we're terrible at, we just keep going forward and doing what we do, and people go on thinking about our stores. And and I forget the gentleman's name. There's an internet myth that there's an individual in Chicago that's making billions of dollars, and he actually owns Goodwill. And it's out there, and there's a lot of people that believe that. And I've had many conversations with people, and I'm sitting there listening to them, and they're telling me, oh, how Goodwill's not any good. It's all profit, and this gentleman in Chicago is getting all this money. And then at some point I go, yeah, I'm a VP for Goodwill, and let me tell you how it really works. It's amazing how many people don't know, because we're terrible at telling our story.
I remember it started about the tycoon making all the money from it.
Yeah.
I heard that from a friend of ours.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an internet. It's, like I'm a French model because the internet said so. It is not true. Every one of our individual Goodwills, we have a board of directors, a CEO, and our management, and all the money stays within that area. In our case, the 22 counties. We pay very, very, very small. When I say very small, it doesn't even register on our bottom line to GII, Goodwill International. And they have no say over what we do. The only thing they do is they manage the trademark, because the smiling G is one of the most recognizable trademarks in the world. So they manage the trademark. So we can't do anything to change the trademark or anything like that. But they don't get anything as far as our revenue or profits. They can't tell us, we want you to do this or do that.
That's strange.
There is no guy in Chicago. There is a guy in Harrisburg. Yeah, no, that's actually based in Maryland and Virginia, GII. And there's nobody that collects money. That I can assure you. I wouldn't be here at Goodwill if it wasn't. I built my career in the transportation industry and warehousing, food distribution. And I got to a point about 10 years ago where I was tired of working 7 days a week, but I also got to a point where financially I didn't need to chase the dollar anymore. Not rich. That's not what I mean. I just didn't need the kids were grown and moved on that next stage of life. And I wanted to find something that I could put my skills to use in a better way for the community and not for a Fortune 100 company. And the opportunity came up to go to Goodwill. I did some research, found out there was nobody in Chicago, and found out some other stuff. And that's how I came. And it took me at least a year, more like 2 years, to actually learn how to operate in the Goodwill operation, because it's totally different than what I grew up in my career.
Bradley, we have multiple offices within our region that service the community for important services. And then to give you an idea of what those important services is like, it's almost like having a caseworker assigned to caseload of individuals, helping them get training, find jobs, write resumes, interview properly. It's from the ground up. And like in my office is in Reading, and I have 3 individuals, and then they're looking at expanding to 4 that employment services out of that office. They're like in Lehigh, they're in Lancaster, they're out in Harrisburg.
In all of our areas. We're actually looking to restructure that potentially at some point in time. That for each of our HR generalists, there's one that's paired to that. And that way we can work with both individuals that are not our employees and individuals that are our employees.
They're not necessarily finding them jobs within Goodwill. Some of them do get hired in Goodwill, but they're also leveraging a lot of partnerships outside of Goodwill.
Yes, ma'am.
Like for me personally, I've never heard or even thought that you guys had these kind of things, and I come from like an area where this would be very, very relevant and very like good, because like most people have like a high school education or like go into a trade and they don't have these options. So I just like don't associate Goodwill with these kind of like programs. So like how any kind of like marketing you're doing for these kind of things.
So we're getting better at it. Like I said, we're terrible at telling our own story. Sometimes we just put our head down and do the work. And we were not good at telling our stories. Now we've brought on a number of marketing people at Goodwill Keystone, and we really are now focused on trying to roll some of that marketing out in what we do, whether they be through the events such as this or our collection and our events. We've reached out a lot with state senators, representatives, with DEP. So any elected officials in local government, reach out with them as well, so that they also, when they're talking to their constituents or get something that comes across their desk, they know that we're a resource for that. So there's a lot of different ways we're doing that. Even TV appearances, the most uncomfortable thing in the world. But I've had to do that. My boss has been on, whatever we can do at this point, we're trying to become better at it. The thing that I tell anybody is go into, either go into a store or go to the website and look it up. There's stuff there. We're not good at telling the story. We're trying to get better. Yes. Oh, I thought you had your hand up. Sorry.
We're getting close to the point where we pause because 10 to the hour is when classes change here. But if you could just quickly mention the partnership with Westchester University.
Yes.
Is new this year.
It is new and we're excited about it. So we did a small run for fall cleanup where we put bins in the student housing for the cleanup. This year it's going to be a little bit more, or this spring is going to be a little bit more expansive. We're going to put bins in that students can bring stuff and put it in there and donate it. And we will be by to clean up and replace the bins, whatever need to be. We're looking at other ways that we can also partner with Westchester. And we've talked about community engagement and different things. Brad and I had another discussion today about another potential that we could do. So we're looking to expand. And Westchester probably right now, aside from Penn State, Harrisburg, which is next door to my office practically, Westchester is probably the leading university that we're really leaning into partnering with and learning how do we do that with the university and then go and expand that. I'm not one to go, let's go to every college. And, Westchester reached out to us and it was like, let's try this. So really leaning into Westchester first, and then what we learn here, we can take elsewhere.
Good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Please join us next week for the next presentation in our series. And
See the chat?
Just so grateful.
Thanks, everyone.
You are a talented public speaker. You did a great job. You did a great job.